our final segment of the day, we're going to talk a little bit with Nancy from the Eddy County DWI Task Force. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
One other thing I want to mention, tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at the Calvary Missionary Baptist Church here in Artesia, Ronnie and Mary Lou Warren will be in concert. And that'll be at 6:30 p.m. Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, 711 West Washington Avenue in Artesia. So we had that drop by, and I wanted to mention that a couple of times today before we finished up our show. So,
very good, very good.
Did you get to spend any time at the fair?
Yes, I did. I actually worked the DWI fair booth.
How'd that go?
It went very well. I really enjoyed it. Got to meet some new people and talked to a lot of people.
How busy was the fair this year?
It was very busy.
Good.
At least, what day did I go? Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay.
Yes. And it was had a lot of people come by, actually.
Good. Because I know there have been years that there had been a lot of folks walking through some of the exhibit buildings and stuff, and then COVID happened and all that good stuff. But
I kind of got the feeling that, it's like when you have a rubber band and you put something in it and you turn that loose, how it just flies. That's the way people are right now.
Yeah.
They're just flying.
Yep.
I'm free. I can go do what I want to do. And my daughter went to Carlsbad Caverns, and she said it was so crowded, it was unreal.
A lot of folks traveling.
Yes, and actually getting to go see something. And she said it was like back-to-back people. And that's a lot of space to cover when you've got back-to-back people. And then they thought they were being really smart because they were taking a friend through these. So they went to Setting Bull Falls after going through the caverns. But they had to park almost a mile away to get into Setting Bull Falls, just to walk in there.
Okay.
Because the parking lot was so full. So I had a family that couldn't hardly even move by the time they got home.
they got their exercise for sure.
They got their exercise.
Well, let's talk about when you say DWI Task Force driving while intoxicated.
Yes.
The conventional wisdom, or at least up until now, has been alcohol.
Yes.
Influence, but now with marijuana legalized in New Mexico, DWI now incorporates people who may be under the influence of marijuana. So you've brought some information on that.
I did, and one of the most disturbing things about it is that driving high can lead to car crashes, and we already knew that.
Right.
But I didn't know that it had already manifested itself to the degree that it has. So. And going through and yes, I have a whole lot of information here.
Right.
Going through all of this information, the biggest thing that I realized is that people are not educating themselves on what marijuana does. It has been so glorified that it is the drug of the century, or however many years. I know it's been going on since the 60s when I was a teenager. But now, as I'm reading this, and it's talking about parents, educate your kids, because kids are using it as low as 9 years of age.
Wow.
And that's pretty serious. Marijuana is so considered to be, it's not going to hurt you, it's okay. Okay, number one, if you're smoking it, you're putting that in your lungs. That causes all kinds of problems. And another thing I found was that a lot of chemicals are being added to the marijuana that's being sold now. So you're putting not only the marijuana in your lungs, but you're putting the chemicals, just like what they've done with cigarettes. You're putting that into your lungs. That has a long-lasting effect. You need to think about it. The one stat that I really didn't know until I read all this was the depression that marijuana actually causes. And it causes severe problems in relationships, that they have literally no stopping place. that it's go, 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 fuss, 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 all this kind of stuff going on until they kill their marriages, they kill their relationship with their children, all this kind of stuff. And I hadn't realized that part of it, and the mental problems. And another great one is the rise in emergency room visits.
And what are people going to the emergency room for?
For overdosing on marijuana, which
Okay.
they are always saying you can't do that.
I was going to say.
Well, apparently you can.
Okay.
And I knew this before, I just didn't know that it had manifested itself that big, because a friend of mine had to take her son to the emergency room. He almost died because they couldn't, they really didn't know what they were doing to fix the problem, to bring him back, because it's such an internal lung kind of problem. But he really messed himself up. So you can oversmoke, I guess. I don't know how else to say that, but you can. And one of the articles in here that was talking about, you've got to be careful. This is, I guess, what people aren't wanting to realize, that marijuana is a drug. Short and simple. It's a drug. And it also said that it's a drug that can't be proven, that everybody's saying it helps with pain and all this. Well, it numbs your senses, so in a way it does help with your pain. And I'm not going to even get into the medical part too much, but they haven't been able to prove that it really has that kind of effect. It just has the effect on the body rather than the actual pain.
Right.
And dumbs yourself down. So there's just pages and pages and pages of starting the conversation. Parents, how do you start the conversation with your kids? How do you talk to them? Number one, you've got to educate yourself.
Right.
This is a serious, as we've talked about, alcohol is a serious problem. It's not to be played with, it's not to be toyed with. Neither is marijuana, no matter how glorified it is, and it's the greatest thing. And now we have a particular guy up there in Washington, D.C. saying how awesome the states have become because of their legalizing marijuana. Well, it has turned into a $30 billion tax flow
Okay.
for Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And we won't go any further in politics than that.
Sure. Well, and I think in New Mexico, that was part of the selling point
Yes.
for legalizing it in New Mexico, is that it was going to generate a tremendous amount of tax revenue.
And apparently it is.
So it's not like oil and gas, but it is generating
it's up
money.
there, and it's the more people that get involved in it, the higher it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's surpassed alcohol already,
Yeah.
the sales of alcohol.
Well, I found this interesting. I got this story yesterday. This is from. Well, I guess this is from the agency, Weeds Cannabis Company, the largest cannabis services company in New Mexico, announced this week they have made key hires to broaden the expertise and services already available at the company. So they've hired some folks.
Mm-hmm.
Weeds will bring a more robust licensing program and new compliance program online to better serve the cannabis industry in New Mexico. So they're going to help make sure the cannabis industry folks are staying compliant with the state law. Here's who they have hired. Kristen Thompson, former director, New Mexico Cannabis Control Division.
Interesting.
Bobby Martinez, former compliance manager, New Mexico Cannabis Control Division. So, I'm not saying anything's illegal. I'm not saying there's anything that, but I find it interesting that two former members of the state of New Mexico's Cannabis Control Division are now working for a company who provides services to cannabis companies to ensure compliance with state regulations. I just thought that was interesting.
Extremely interesting.
Yeah.
So what is the state doing for all of this controlling?
I guess they're going to hire some other people to replace them.
Several years ago, we had someone come and talk to us from the Marijuana Compliance Agency.
Mm-hmm. It may have been one of these two folks.
Yes, and they they were asked about who they go see and all this kind of stuff. They hadn't been to see anybody because they didn't have enough help. And I'm thinking, so what good, and I'm sitting here now thinking, what good was the compliance agency in the first place?
Yeah.
Were they really checking on all of these people that were growing pot for?
Now, I'm not going to say that it's a bad idea. I'll give you an example. We have, at Pecos Valley Broadcasting Company, we have a attorney in Washington, D.C., that represents us and guides us through issues dealing with the Federal Communications Commission. And for the longest time, the attorney that we had that worked in this private law firm, one of his previous career positions was in the legal department at the Federal Communications Commission. So from that standpoint, that's probably an advantage to have somebody who used to work there who can help their clients comply with the law. So I think that's what's going on here. But it's just, it's very, very interesting that you have people that were part of the compliance division within the state of New Mexico, which you said a little shorthanded. And so now they've left the state, and now they're going to be helping this particular company make sure that they are in compliance, or their clients are in compliance with state law. So it's probably not a bad thing to be in compliance with state law, but
Well, it's usually a good thing to be in compliance with state law.
If the state law is well written and it's good guidance and all that other stuff. So
I haven't read the law. I don't know what the laws are.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that part of it. I was just been kind of aggravated at the whole situation. But back to
sure.
Car crashes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize how long marijuana stays in your system.
A lot longer than alcohol.
A lot longer, like 24 hours. And then you have on top of that, does your job allow you to smoke pot on Thursday night?
Well, and you've talked about this before because people say, well, it's legal now.
Yeah.
Well, not if you're going to be in compliance with your employer's rules and regulations, which are based on state regulations and insurance obligations. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have to, I think more than ever, be aware of what's going on. If you want to keep your job, be aware if you out there driving down the road and you're higher than a kite. And the other thing that they stressed over and over and over in all of these pages was that marijuana is like alcohol. It's a depressant. Well, what happens when you're depressed, when you're going downhill?
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe there is a high to it, I don't know, but going downhill and all of a sudden you're angry, you're upset, everything bothers you, you get out on the road and that person in front of you stopped, maybe their blinker was on way back there and now they're stopping and now you're angry with them. And then things start to happen.
Can lead to bad decisions being made behind the wheel of the car.
Bad decisions, just like with alcohol.
Yeah.
And so many people are saying, well, it's so much better than alcohol. Is it? Is it really? Or is it just hyped up?
So let me ask you this. Make great points. Parents want to educate themselves so they can help educate their kids. Does the DWI task force have access to resources for parents?
I'm not sure if they do or not, because this is also new to us. But just looking up all this information, I guess it was Lana that she's hooked me up with all this information.
Mm-hmm.
If you go online, just look up marijuana in children. And you have lots of really good studies that you can read about, really good information. Like I said, there's a bunch of stuff in this thing I didn't know. But it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of states. This is a copy of the states that have fully legalized marijuana. And it's growing. So even if you're outside the state of New Mexico, You go to all these other states and they've got the same problem. So here you are with not only having to deal with, is that a drunk driver coming at me, or is he high on marijuana coming at me? What's going on? So we have to be, as people that don't use these drugs, extra vigilant, extra watchful to see if that person's coming across that line. Cross that line, have a head-on collision. As I've said before, they usually happen to the left. Why, I still don't know, but that's the way they all happen.
Yeah.
So if you're driving down the road, you as a sober person have to be a little more vigilant.
Kind of brings me to the question, we've got just a couple of minutes left, brings me to the question, how long, when the light goes green, should you wait before the intersection is clear?
I wait long enough to make sure the intersection is clear.
That's what you have to do, because people see the light go yellow, and that's like the cue to accelerate.
Yes.
And it's like, no. The yellow light means decelerate, slow down, and come to a stop. But for so many people, it's, I got to get through the intersection, and they gun it. And so you're sitting there waiting to go into the intersection. That light goes green for me. I'm looking both ways and up the highway both directions to see whether or not it's clear for me to go into the intersection.
Because it's not always clear.
Yeah.
In fact, too many times it's not clear. I had a friend that just thought it was awesome to go through those yellow lights until he totaled out his car.
Yeah.
You know, but not only did he total out his car, he totaled out a perfectly innocent person's car.
Yeah.
So,
and then you add to that the influence of alcohol or marijuana on somebody's reasoning and thinking.
Which, the reasoning and thinking is basically gone.
That's right.
So there you are.
So look up, get your resources, get educated, and then make sure you're letting kids know this is not the glorified, beautiful, wonderful, innocent thing that everybody tells us that it is.
And many schools are finding out that it's happening in elementary schools. So start when they're young.
That's right. Nancy, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And we'll see you here in a couple of weeks.